Hi, everyone. It's Wendy Grooms from Conscious Relating, and this is my first recording. And normally I was just wanting to do audio for the podcast, but I know on YouTube it's really nice to see people and to connect with them that way. So I'm recording from my little office here, and we've got my beautiful singing bowl from my friend Diane. Let me turn the volume up. That's better because I know it can be too low. So I'm going to be looking at my notes some, but this is the first time I'm putting this out in kind of a full way. And I wanted to go into more of why I call this conscious relating. And that encompasses how I got into healing and this whole like conscious spiritual path. So, as a child, as a girl, I was totally connected to animals, always loved them. I just felt a natural kinship with them. And that included the earth and trees and nature. I just really, really felt aligned with it. And one day, my grandparents lived in Sligo Creek Park, and that park is really considered a deciduous forest, and the trees there are huge. And I was down at the park with probably my mother or somebody, I don't know who it was, and I communed with the trees there. I was about 5, and I had a conscious connection with the trees, and I could hear them, I could feel their wisdom, and I knew that they were alive and were just teeming with wisdom. So that was the first time that I can consciously remember connecting with spirit. I spent a lot of time in the woods, and as a girl, behind the house I grew up in, and always just with nature. Not that I necessarily wanted to pick up a snake, like some people really are aligned with all of that. That was not my path. I had a different relationship with the whole snake energy, which I'll talk about in another recording. So that started, and just lots of love of animals. We had a dog, and we had some cats, and there's a lot of themes that go into all of that, which I don't think I'll go into today. But I also learned a lot of like emotional dependence. Like that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to bond with our parents emotionally so that we can become strong adults and have enough security with the initial relationships that we can individuate into full conscious healthy adults. And that didn't totally happen with me, and it doesn't happen with many people on the planet, right? We're here, we have these lessons. That's the way I see it. And anyway, that's not to discount any level of trauma, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So I had all this opening in childhood, and then I came up against a lot of challenges. And that led me to be really disassociated from that level of consciousness. I was like living from here up. I had a lot of chronic pain. And with disassociation, there's usually some level of addiction, and we can all have addictions in our lives. It doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol. It can be food or TV or porn or worrying too much, obsessing, cigarette smoking, coffee, not taking really care of our essential selves, of this vessel, right, that we've been given. And when we care for these vessels, we can become a channel for spirit and for the earth, because our energetic chakra system, we go up through the higher chakras into spirit and down through the lower chakras to open to the earth, and your hands and your palms and your ears, and our chakras all over the place. And chakras are energy centers that retain information. And they're also portals. They're portals for our core chakras. The smaller ones are portals for the core chakras. That's a very, very general statement because I'm not a chakra specialist. And when the chakras are spinning in the right direction, they emanate light. And the chakras are, they're like hard drives on the computer. They hold information, they store information. Let me turn this off. Okay. And when they're spinning and awake and alive and they're connected all the way through, that's what we talk about when we talk about Kundalini. Kundalini rises up through the chakras. And when we bring it up through the lower consciousness through the heart into the higher consciousness, we can receive from spirit. Excuse me. And I know there's a lot of channelers and all of that. My role is to really help embody and ground the light so that we can expand further into the light. But how to be a channel for us while we're here on the planet, right? And there's so much going on, my gosh. Everything happening in the Ukraine just like totally opens the heart, right? We are all so connected and human and spiritual, and we all have a heart. And if your heart isn't open to all of this, I invite you to take a deeper look inside. So back to disassociation and addiction, right? So our culture is really based in addiction. We're kind of bred on a collective level to have some level of addiction, to disassociate on some level. And some people's disassociative patterns are bigger and more challenging than others. So it's kind of like dissociative versus embodiment. And when we're embodied, we take up our field. Our field is palpable to others. We radiate an essence of, I was going to say authority, but not in the negative context of authority. We radiate wholeness and heart and consciousness, and people feel that. Versus our anxiety and all of our emotional maladies and all the challenges and even our health challenges. And I'm not here to judge anybody about any of that. I've had plenty of my own, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So all of that, like for me, from 11 to 24, I started using drugs and smoking, and I was having like actually big spiritual awakenings. I'd smoked opium when I was 12, and I was having past life visions of myself and I was having lots of spiritual awakenings, but because of everything that was happening, there was a huge amount of trauma that was also happening. So by the time I was 24, it was like change or leave the planet. Have a spiritual awakening or die. And in the 12-step modality, in the 12-step recovery world, early on, I did get help at 23 and 24, and my life totally changed. I started having lots of spiritual awakenings and miracles that happened. And that opening just led me further and further and further along the path. So what I was going to say was in 12-step recovery, this meeting that I was at a long time ago, this man was talking about alcoholics. You're walking down a path and you come to a Y in the road. You're on this path, you're on this alcoholic path, you come to this Y in the road. And this is spiritual awakening, alcoholic death. And the guy was like, who sits there and thinks about it? Like, why would you even consider it? You would just go spiritual life. And but people that are addicted and are in resistance to their own pain, their own collective awakening, will sit there and go, well, spiritual alcoholic death sounds pretty good. Even if it's like, let's say, I'm allergic to strawberries, which is what he talked about. Do I eat the strawberries and have the reaction? Like, let's say we're severely allergic to strawberries. Do I eat the strawberries or do I surrender? And many of us will eat the strawberries. So anyway, that's just a little example. I'm doing a cleanse. So I'm having like all this shifting going on inside me. So at that point, when I was 23 and 24, I started going to meetings and I was getting a lot of help. And I literally started having spiritual awakenings. And my grandmother, who died when I was 16, who I was very close to, who was probably the biggest spiritual teacher in my life because she embodied so much love and so much light. And I always just felt so held and cared for and loved, like immensely loved by her. Excuse me. And so I have been going to these Al-Anon meetings and AA meetings, and I was really learning about my role and learning how to like take a hold of how much growing up in alcoholism, addiction, and my own patterns had affected me. So I was at a meeting one day and made plans to have dinner with this lady after the meeting. And she said, "Do you want to go to dinner?" And I said, "Yeah, can my friend Linda come?" And she says, "Yeah." So Linda and I drive to this lady's house and we get there and it's way over in Rockville, like downtown Rockville, which, if you don't live local, you won't know what that means. But we were getting in the car and she's like, "Oh my God, I forgot. I've got to go let in so-and-so's dog. I'm taking care of her dog." So she's like, "Will you go with us?" And I said, "Yeah." We said, "Yeah." So that's way over on the other side of in Four Corners in Silver Spring, which is, at least a 40-minute drive from Rockville, 30 minutes probably back then. And so we're driving, we're going down University Boulevard, and we're getting very close to the neighborhood where my grandparents lived. And oh, I forgot to tell you this. So I'm in the kind of early recovery, and I'm like writing to God every day, and I'm like reading the big book. And I told God that I wanted to have a connection with my grandmother because I was not wanting to have this, I was trying to make my relationship with God personal, because that's what they kind of teach you. Like, you grow up, if you were exposed to God or spirit as a child or religion, that's the concept that you learned. And I had a lot of resentment and a lot of anger and I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of pain. And so for about 3 weeks, every day, I said, "Okay, God, I want to see my grandmother. I want to have some kind of connection to my grandmother. I don't care how it happens, what it is, but I need this." And some people would say you shouldn't be doing that, but that's what I intuitively felt I needed to do. So I asked every day, I prayed about it for 3 weeks. So there we are driving down University Boulevard, and we're coming up close to the street that leads to the street where my grandparents lived. And I was like having these waves and waves of, I don't know what, confusion. It was probably light pouring into me and not really knowing what was going on. And I made them pull the car over. I was like, "Wait, wait." And I told them about my prayers and all these pieces that I put out there and to the universe. And so I said, "If you pull up in front of my grandmother's house, I'm not going to believe this." So she comes down to the stop sign. She takes a right. She drives up about 5, 7 houses, and she parks right in front of the house that was my grandparents. I was like, "Oh my God." So I run out of the car. I run up the stairs. I'm at the door and I can't believe it. It's like, there I am at my grandmother's house. This woman unlocks the door, and there I am in the living room of my grandparents' house that I'd spent so many years in for many, like all of my life, right? Those first 25 years, 24 years. And there I am, the carpet's the same, the curtains are the same. And I close my eyes and I see my grandmother and I see this huge golden burning light. It was like a burning bush, no joke. It was so powerful. And the first thought I have is, if I can only trust God like I'm trusting this moment, if I could just trust you with everything. That was my first conscious spiritual awakening. And my previous, what kind of led to that, I'm trying to think if that was before or after. I also had some other experiences. So I was at my friend Cherry's house, and who I'd been hanging out with a lot. And I'd spent the night, and in the morning she played this meditation tape, and it was by Louise Hay. And I'd never heard of Louise Hay ever. And I had a lot of anxiety, severe anxiety, like you have someone's like kicked you in the gut really bad. And so I listened to this meditation tape and I just loved it. Her voice was so calm and so healing. And so she said, if you like it, borrow it, right? So I borrowed it and I had a cassette player in my car. So I put the other side of the player in my car because I couldn't listen to the radio. The radio was totally triggering me. Any songs about all those songs about codependency basically were totally triggering me. So I was listening to Louise Hay, and at the very end of the tape, or close to the end, she starts talking and she's like, and you chose your parents. And I'm like, what? Like, no way. No way is she telling me that my soul, chose to be in this situation, because I was really, really angry at my parents, like beyond angry. And at the same time, I had another thought. Why do I feel so calm listening to her? There's got to be some truth in what she's saying. So that was another little, it was like well, it was a big nugget really, but it was like a little nugget in my consciousness that was like sand kind of sifting through all the other confusion. And then another time I was leaving my friend's house and it was late at night and I was really struggling. It wasn't really that late, but it was like 11 o'clock. I was really struggling, like maybe I'm going to drink again. Maybe I'm going to, like, I don't want to do all this recovery stuff. And I'm driving down the road, go down to my apartment, and I'm in the left turn lane. And right next to me pulls up this truck. And who's in the truck? But this guy that I had dated that like it was a really bad situation. And it was like the universe saying to me, okay, you want to go backwards? Here's what you're going to get. And like stuff like that started happening. And I started having these conscious connection with the universe or God, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's like consciously connecting to the universe. Because when you start talking to the universe, it talks back to you. And the more conscious you are of your relationship to that conversation, the more you become a conscious creator. Because like one of my spiritual teachers in this life has said to me over and over, we're always creating, constantly creating, Wendy. It's just a matter of whether you're really doing it consciously. If you're not consciously creating, you're creating all the lower stuff. So anyway, that's a whole huge topic that we won't go into further. Okay, so I started having all these spiritual awakenings, right? And I was meeting others on the path that really became like real heart and soul friends, that you could tell them anything, all the pain, all the negative feelings, all the things that happened that you wouldn't just tell another friend because they wouldn't understand. And that started opening my life up, right? And so all that started happening. And then I got led to body work and healing because I had so much chronic pain. Like it ruled my life. And so I got led to body work and massage, and that further opened everything. And this was very common for people in the 90s. This was happening in the 80s and 90s. There was like a spiritual influx of people doing, excuse me, inner work, a lot of inner work. So I started getting body work. Then I went to massage school. Then I got led to my next teacher, where I learned about educated touch. And so that's really like somatic work. And that's another topic that we'll go into at some point. But the reason I bring it up is because as all of these things started flowing into my life, and I had my body work practice, and I was doing healing, and I was meditating regularly, and I was seeing angels, and I was learning how to cleanse, and learning that I was addicted to my cereal, and that it was like blocking the flow, and like letting go of all of these layers of comfort that were really not that comforting. It was just familiar. And I'm bringing that up because in my animal work, what I termed as conscious relating included animal communication, conscious touch, because I massaged animals for a long time. And I still can, but conscious touch is like a combination of animal communicating, healing touch. Well, I shouldn't say healing touch because that's another modality, but conscious touch is like somatic massage, energy healing combined. So it was all of those things combined in working with animals, and also people and ourselves. So let's say that we're having, like, let's say our cat is like acting out and wanting to get out, and like, just doing something that seemingly irritates us. When we slow down and connect with them, really connect with them, connect with ourselves without an agenda, without our emotional baggage, they will shift. It's like a miracle happens. They shift. It's just like with children. You can redirect their thinking, redirect their focus, and they shift. And, kudos to all the parents out there. I know parenting is a big job. So, anyway, I'm just kind of wanting to go through these themes of all of the topics that I'll be going through. And then there's like dealing with memories and trauma and food addiction and other addictions, and how they're all correlated. And we're going to go into that too. I'm going to have people on that we're going to talk about all these things. And as we work on the trauma and the memories and all of that, then we have further spiritual awakening, which hopefully includes further grounding, further embodiment. We have to have the embodiment to handle the awakening. And then, the next thing that happened is, so I had that experience with my grandmother, right? And then 2 years later, less than 2 years later, my mom died. She basically dropped dead. And although I had, known for a long time she was going to leave early. And I had been telling my therapist. I actually walked into this therapist office and I said, my mother's dying. And she said, I believe you. And, because other people really didn't. That was a Karen Foundation therapist. So my mother's death brought up even more opening, right? It totally cracked my heart open. And as in like in Native American tradition, they talk about stretching your heart, like stretching a drum. If you've ever made a drum to really stretch, the skin it's a big job. Anyway, so my mother's death really, really stretched me, and it opened me to consciously connect with the other side, because she was around me all the time. She wouldn't leave me alone. We had a lot to work out, and we did over time. But that really led me to stretch, and we all have that opportunity with people on the other side, especially if there's a real heart bond there. And even though I had a huge amount of uh, resentment and hurt and pain around my mother, I really loved her. Um, so all of these things lead us to merge with universal consciousness. And that's another level of conscious relating. So conscious relating is me sitting here. I feel like my heart it feels like gold today. It feels like a total gem. And to really connect on that level, if we're not on a have a spiritual practice, whether it's yoga or the Course in Miracles or some kind of um, conscious path, it's harder. And one of the easiest ways to connect, get our hearts to open more, is to treat our liver really well. And how do we do that? We can start juicing. We can eat more greens, cooked greens, which is really good for the spleen. And the spleen and the liver communicate. And this is like Chinese medicine based. So when we do that, um, we have there's more, the heart gets fed more, right? The heart's a fire organ on an elemental level. And if there's no wood going into the fireplace, there is no fire. So we have to be feeding wood to the fire. So and wood is liver and five element. And I'm not attached to five element. It's just a way to describe it. When we take good care of the liver, because it does so much for the body, it's the master organ. It's a master communicator. So when I was in massage school and I was working with that healer that really taught me about educated touch and somatic healing, and I I just lost my train of thought. We were talking about the liver. Oh, I was following cleanses and Barbara Brennan's chakra cleanse and work and meditating. But I had a lot of support, right? A lot of healers around me. And when my clients would come, I could literally just put my hand over their liver and it would tell me everything that it needed or that was going on. And the same with like different parts of the body. And we can get to that level of consciousness if we ourselves choose that level of consciousness, which means that, we have like these outer shells that we've been I'm trying to think of the word. It's like it's kind of like a trauma bubble almost. In somatic language, we build an armor to protect the personality, to protect our memories, to protect us. And when we have the courage and the support and the willingness to allow that outer shell, it's kind of like a walnut, right? If you crack a walnut open, inside is the raw meat. Well, inside of us is the raw meat, is the raw truth, is the raw healing and wholeness of who we really are. And we have that potentiality. All of us have that potentiality. And we could liken it to Christ. Christ was an awakened vessel and thus was able to heal. There are many people with that ability on the planet. And we can come together and do these hard things that are happening. Now that's all really easy to say from my chair in my nice quiet space, where what's happening in the Ukraine is completely horrific and totally traumatizing. I mean, could you imagine can you imagine being 69, 80 and having to leave with your cat and your little bag and become totally homeless and have to walk to find a place to live? Meanwhile, you have to like pee and poop and eat, and and there's like, all you are is just walking with a bunch of people. It's horrible. And from a bigger spiritual perspective, we can see everybody on the planet as that raw potentiality, that we have that raw potentiality, and that we are resilient beings. And I'm just going to add this other piece because this can sound very spiritually um, superior, or I can't think of the word right now, but anyway, and now of course I lost my train of thought again. Oh, that, you know, I've had a lot of different health challenges in my life. One of them, I'll just say, when I was 11, close to turning 12, I started having these horrific pains in my gut. Not my intestines, but like higher up under my rib cage, like sharp, sharp stabbing pains. Like when you try to breathe, you can't breathe, you get stabbed with that pain. And I even went to the hospital a few times, and they would say, "Oh, it's gas," and maybe that was true. Um, but that led to all kinds of other problems that went on and on and on and on. And it was really an invitation for me to have this conscious relationship with my inner self, with my whole self. And so my point is, illness can be an invitation to wholeness. And I'll just say this one last piece. So, what happened for me is I was having pain from like 9 years old. I used to do like these yoga postures and didn't even know that I was doing yoga, and trying to soothe my back. And my parents took me to different doctors, and really all the way up until I got into recovery, and none of them could help me. And they all ultimately said, "It's in your head." And there was a lot going on. So there's no doubt I somatized everything that was going on. But there were some other medical things going on that they didn't know about. And all of that pain, like I mentioned earlier, led me to getting help, and getting body work, and that opened up, and it helped me take responsibility for my whole experience. It helped me see things, that I wasn't just a victim. I was a player I was a participant, a character in the whole play of my life. And what role did I want to play? And I will say there are many, many layers to healing, to illness, to recovery. So, and I use that word recovery in a broad sense. I'm not talking about 12-step recovery. I'm talking about recovery as a whole, recovery of our wholeness, recovery of our wellness. And the reason I bring it up is that convention didn't work for me, especially initially. And even now, there are so many limitations to conventional medicine, and it's very, very painful for me to see, um, especially many, even friends, that are completely going to just pure convention and leaving out the rest. Look, we're only 200 years old, this country, and conventional medicine. We have all this other history of healing and medicine. Our foremothers, our ancient feminine ancestors, really are the masters of agriculture. They're the ones that were able to find out this plant does this and heals this. And there's so much we can honor with that. And that's another topic I'm going to talk about. And I'm not saying to throw the baby out with the bathwater in any direction, because I don't think that's healthy for any of us either. Because what we need is integration. We need integration on this planet, not black, white. I'm right, you're wrong. my way is the right way, your way sucks. That's basically what social media and all this stuff, it's such a it's it's like a cauldron for that. And I say, let's throw that dirty water out and start over and actually converse and talk with each other and connect. Because any of us that are just coming from right here and what we think we know, and but we're from here down, we're not awake, we're not really present. There's a huge, vast wealth of information that's missing. So, anyway, this is my awakening to conscious relating online in the virtual world. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. And I'll be back with many different topics that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. Have a blessed, wonderful day.